We're expanding the electoral map because we are going to officially play in the state of New Jersey. We're going to win the state of New Jersey. We're also looking really great in the state of Minnesota, which hasn't been won since 1952, and we're leading in the polls. And the state of Virginia, and actually many other states. I don't know, it could be all of them. This guy's so damn bad, it could be all of them. All across America, millions of people in so-called blue states are joining our movement based on love, intelligence, and a thing called common sense.
Joining me now is Democrat consultant and former House Judiciary Committee Chief Counsel Julian Epstein and syndicated columnist and attorney Josh Hammer. Gentlemen, great to see you both. Thanks so much for being here. Julian, let me kick things off with you. Get your take on that rally that Trump had on Saturday night. What does it tell you?
It tells me he's trolling Joe Biden the way George Bush 41 trolled Michael Dukakis in 1988 when he campaigned in the Boston Harbor, which is actually next to where I'm sitting right now. And what he's saying, I think, is he's comfortable with his lead in the battleground states, and therefore he can go into blue territories. And it's a taunt towards Joe Biden, whose approval numbers have been, in the dumps for a very long time, for 2.5, 3 years at this point. I don't know about his ability to turn around a blue state like New Jersey in his corner. But if you look at what happened in 2021 in the gubernatorial race, voters there clearly said that they do not like extreme left policies. And I think a lot of the polling is showing that one of the reasons that Biden is so far behind Trump in the battleground states and elsewhere is because they don't like the policies on the economy. They don't like, I think Israel's going to be a huge loser because he's catering to the far left right now. I think that's very, very unwise. And I think voters don't like things like immigration. And so if there's an opportunity to move numbers in New Jersey, I think Trump has it.
I think you're absolutely right about the Israel policy. I found over the weekend, talking to lots of independents, that this was a red line for them, Josh, that they felt that this is it, that if he is going to stop shipments of weapons to Israel now, in the middle of Israel's fight for its survival, I can't align with President Biden.
Yeah, Maria, look, I'm not going to put the cart in front of the horse. I'm a Jewish conservative who has been frustrated by my own people's inability to vote for the political party that is so clearly better for their interests. Has been one of my biggest bugaboos for literally my entire life, my entire time following politics. But if there's ever going to be a crossing of the Rubicon, if there is ever going to be a time for Jewish American voters to get off of the Democratic Party plantation, you would think that this would be the time. With a U.S. president who is literally, as your previous guest Corey Mills, I think, aptly explained, is undermining their mission in impeachable, offense-worthy fashion. And it's not just an Israel issue, Maria. As Congressman Mills said, there are American hostages still being held by a U.S. State Department-recognized foreign terrorist organization there in Hamas's subterranean terror tunnels in Gaza. This, since day one, was the worst American hostage crisis taken on its own terms since Tehran in 1979. What Joe Biden is doing to Israel is disgusting and disgraceful. And if this is how America treats its own purported allies, what in the world is the incentive for second-tier powers like Saudi Arabia to get closer with America? They're just going to go off to China at this point. If this is how America treats its allies, what is the point of allying with America? This president's foreign policy in the Middle East has been upside down, has been totally backwards. Iran is emboldened. All of our allies are subdued. We desperately need Donald Trump back when it comes to the Middle East.
Well, I mean, Julian, this Washington Post story is pretty outrageous. The fact that the administration is leaking this story to the Washington Post that they would share sensitive information about the hidden tunnels that they believe the Hamas terrorists are in only if they don't go into Rafah. I mean, if you have that kind of sensitive information, the administration, about where the Hamas terrorists are in these tunnels, and you haven't given it to Israel yet, wow. Trump discussed this at his rally on Saturday night, slamming Biden over the Israel policies. Watch this.
This week he announced that he will withhold shipping weapons to Israel as they fight to eradicate Hamas terrorists in Gaza. No, it was shocking to hear it. even while there are still American hostages being held by Hamas. And they're saying, oh, October 7th never happened. You know, they say that. And Biden has fallen for it. Crooked Joe's action is one of the worst betrayals of an American ally in the history of our country. I support Israel's right to win its war on terror. Is that okay?
Julian, is this really just about votes? I mean, could it be that this administration has this policy so that they want to appease the pro-Palestinian vote?
Well, it is wrong, Maria, on just so many levels. And to Josh's point, I think you're not only going to see Jews leaving the Democratic Party. I've been saying this for a very long time. I think you're going to see centrists and independents move over to Trump. 85% of centrists support the Israel policy. So I think it's terrible from a political point of view. It's also immoral. What Israel is doing is they are fighting a fanatical medieval terrorist regime in Hamas, which is bent on not just killing every Jew it can find, it is also bent on ultimately destroying the West. So I don't really understand the lack of moral clarity here on the left and with the Democratic Party. But furthermore, this is going the fact that they are withholding more precision weaponry is going to make civilian casualties much more likely in Rafah. And you know, the idea that because the weapons that they're holding, they're going to have to use less precise weapons, and it probably will mean that they have to use far less precise weapons. But what you're also doing here is you're encouraging terrorists. You're encouraging the extremist protesters. You know, Students for Justice in Palestine actually supported Hamas's raid on October 7th. And what you're doing is you're saying to them, if you commit terrorist acts and then you use civilians as your shield, that is a good strategy because that can pressure the West and it can pressure the United States not to respond. So you're encouraging the use of terrorism. You're encouraging the use of civilian human shields. And I just think this is ultimately going to make Joe Biden look very weak. He looked weak in the case of Afghanistan. He looked weak in the case of Saudis, where he went after the Saudis and he had to go on bended knee. He's going to look weak on immigration when he has to reverse his immigration plan. And I think one of the advantages that Donald Trump has is that he looks like a strong, whether you like him or dislike him, he looks like a strong candidate. Joe Biden here looks like he is cowering to an extreme left wing, which represents a very narrow slice of the electorate, and he is forsaking not just the Jewish community. I think he is forsaking a lot of votes in the center here, and I think it's really silly politics. I think his staff is misserving him here.
Yeah, it could be a massive mistake.